most of the time, so you don't have to look at me so much. There's a small. Okay. So, um, while I try and fine tune a little bit, Mara, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
I guess, of course. So I'm Mara. I'm 22 years old. I'm from New Caledonia, and I've been in the industry for about a year and a half now. I studied in New Zealand, a Bachelor of Creative Technologies, and then I went on to work for a company called A44 for about a year, and I am now working for Supermassive Games.
Cool. So you have previously obviously gone to school. Not everyone goes to school, but in your case, you did went to the school. Can you tell us a little bit about your time there and pros, cons, challenges, or if you got something out of it?
Yeah, so the course that I did was 3 years, so it was quite intense, I would say. It was pretty much like a generic course about a bit of everything. So modeling, concept, animation, rigging, and I guess it was just kind of so people could kind of check out what they liked and what they were interested in the game industry. But there was nothing about lighting, and so there was nothing that was really interesting me during my time at uni, which was a bit worrying because I was often just thinking, should I be doing this? Is this like the right path for me? And during my last year at uni, I found out that you can actually be doing lighting, and that's an actual job in the industry. So I just devoted all my time to just learning about lighting on my own, on top of all the work that we had to do for uni. And I was just like constantly just trying to work in Unreal and trying to do little doodles here and there. Yeah, so it was a bit challenging not really knowing what you were in for the game industry, I'd say. But it worked out pretty well.
Cool. Just so viewers know, I'm also trying to fix the stream window. You can see I'm playing with it live actually. Um, so, um, if you have any questions, feel free to leave some questions for her to answer later. We'll do a QA round because there's a limit on how many things I can think of alone. So, let me just look at our kind of predefined topics. I only have one screen, guys, so I have to use different screens here. So we have briefly talked a little bit about just time at the university, but
Yeah.
so when you're a student, you're trying to learn things and you're trying to, I guess, catch up on all the technology. How do you feel when it comes to the level of technology you have to learn? Is that a lot? Because I remember when I used to study, we didn't have Substance Painter, we didn't have a Substance Designer, we had like 3D Studio Max and a couple of
Yeah.
tools. So how is it for you?
Yeah, it was quite difficult because I've never done anything digital before. Like it was my first time opening Photoshop, the first time that we got to uni, and I was like, what is going on? First time trying 3ds Max and Maya and Unreal, and everything was it was quite hard to get used to everything. But this is what uni is for, right? They teach you and they're here to help you understand how everything works. So after the first year, when you kind of have all the basics down, it was actually fine, but the workload is quite intense because there's a lot of different subjects that you have to learn a lot of things about. So that was quite a lot of work as well. But yeah, technology-wise, it's a bit difficult at first when you have no knowledge at all on any type of software. And afterwards, it gets definitely easier. And the more I use them now, and the easier it gets for me to be able to create something. So yeah, it's just about practice, really.
Yeah, definitely. Um, So when you were a student, you were obviously learning, as you said, different tools and different topics and so on. Did you already decide ahead of time that you wanted to be a lighting artist, or did you just stumble upon it as you were a student?
Yeah, I just stumbled upon it. Like, I wanted to be an environment artist at first, but I just really didn't like modeling. I just didn't have the patience for it, and it was just a bit. It just wasn't what was making me feel that passion for games that I have when I play them, and yes, I was very like focused on trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So then I was like, oh, maybe I should be a character artist or I should be an animator. And both of them were just not my cup of tea, really. And yeah, it got to a point where I was really wondering if I should keep in this direction because I couldn't find what I liked. And in the end, I was just looking into it more and more, and I stumbled upon Boone Cotter's interview on YouTube, and he's a lighting artist for Naughty Dog. And I thought like that was such an interesting interview about his process and how he found lighting and how what he's doing now for Naughty Dog. And yeah, I figured, oh, I could probably just try lighting and see if this is something that interests me. And after a few weeks or months of research, I was like, this is probably like the most interesting thing that I could possibly be doing for games. It's like you're that person that managed to just make the environments and the world just so much better and enhance it in a way that's just so beautiful for the players to actually witness and play. And yeah, I was like, oh, I think this is definitely what feel is right for me. And yeah, and the more I do it now, and the more I realize that this is exactly what I wanted to do. So I'm glad that I found this interview.
That's cool. I mean, it's definitely. I know a lot of people go into lighting for different reasons. Obviously, some people like just doing the end result because it makes things look pretty, and they also, like me, they avoid the whole tedious process of 3D modeling, which can be a bit tedious, and that
Yeah.
process as well. So I definitely also can agree with that. Um, I also stumbled into lighting a bit later than others as well, so it's definitely interesting to hear your point of view in this topic as well. Um, so you've been at two studios so far, so you're still pretty. You have done like a year or two now, right?
Yes, so it's been a year and a half since I've graduated, about that time. So as soon as I graduated, I was lucky enough to get a job for A44, which is a New Zealand company, game company, and I got hired as a lighting artist and level designer. So I was working for them for about 11 months, and yeah, so I learned a lot as well while doing this. And then after that, I decided that lighting was really what I wanted to focus on more than level design. So I decided to like full on just do the CGMA for 3 months. And that was very, very good too, because I learned a bit more about the techniques and so like different types of lighting techniques and ways of doing things with the teachers and the other students. And when I finished this course, then I got hired by Supermassive Games, which was about a month ago.
Cool. So let's take a step back and investigate a little bit about from being a student to getting an opportunity at A44. Is that correct? Uh,
Yes.
do you want to talk and think a little bit about how that happened, and did you do any specific things that you think is useful for other students? Like, did you spend a lot of time preparing your portfolio? Did you go to specific events? Did you network a lot, or are you already well connected by the time you were finished? Like, what happened?
So it was definitely, I think, thanks to my portfolio. Like I was saying, the university I went to sadly was more of a generic uni, so they weren't really teaching us anything about lighting. So I had to, on my free time, like if you want to be an environment artist, you will try and have as much environments that you've created on your portfolio. Or if you're a concept artist, you'll try to practice as much as you can to get most of the basics down and just have a lot as well in your portfolio. So I decided to just every day after uni, I would go home and do 4 or 5 hours of lighting doodles that I would then post on ArtStation. And I did that for about 3 months, and I had like a lot of different projects and small little things here and there that I would just post to just show my progress. And then I was like, oh, what the heck? I can just send in my application and see if they need anyone. And yeah, they contacted me back and said that they were quite impressed with my portfolio, just the fact that I had just so much that I put through. And doing a lighting study in 4 to 5 hours is quite fast, so they quite like this idea. So I had my interview with them where they asked me a lot about how I decided to become a lighting artist, how I work, what type of workflow do I have when I'm doing my lighting, and that's how I got the job. So I would say that definitely working really hard on your portfolio is the main thing if you want to go forward in the industry, because this is how people know your worth. Like ArtStation is such a great platform because you can see everyone's um, everyone's work and how their processes and their breakdowns of how they do certain things. And it's always, there's a learning window as well, where there's just so much information and references to gather. So yeah, I think it's definitely the best way to go is ArtStation and portfolio work, and just keep at it all the time.
Cool. So, did you get any questions during the job interview that you found like very difficult, or you were feeling that you were unprepared for, or did you find it pretty straightforward to answer the questions during the job interview?
It's usually pretty straightforward, but as a newly graduated student, I didn't have a lot of the technical side of lighting down. Like, I was still learning, and there's a lot of technical things that you learn on the job, right? You'll be working with the team, and they have more experience, and they teach you like certain things that you wouldn't normally know. So they asked me a few technical questions that I had no idea about, but I was just honest, and I was like, oh, well, I've been learning lighting on my own for a little while now, so I'm not too sure about this, but I'm sure that I can learn it very fast, and I can just look into it, and there's so much resources that it shouldn't be a problem to be able to understand these things a bit better. So some of the technical questions they tried to kind of held back because they understood that it wasn't my forte, but then they were asking a lot about the artistic side of things, and just asking me to critique my own work, see where I could have done better, and certain things like this. So it's quite good to be critical of your own work, still loving what you do, but obviously see where you could have gone better, or where you could push it to that next stage where it's just slightly better and more professional.
So, when you were working on your pieces, and you say you would get some feedback from people from different places, I assume. How do you feel you deal with the feedbacks? Because a lot of people they'll take the feedback, and they'll some people have an easy time processing it. Some people have an easy time implementing it. Some people,
Yeah.
there's different people who deal with different type of feedback. So, how is it that for you when you get different feedback?
Um, I feel like feedback is, if you're asking for feedback, you should definitely be open to whatever the people are going to say about it. There's no point in sugarcoating some feedback, because the person is not really going to learn from it. Whereas I know for myself, the people that I was asking feedback from were quite straightforward. Like, look, this isn't working. This is not how lighting looks, or this isn't how this should look, or whatever they were telling me. You have to take it and just try to understand that they do have a bit more experience than you, so they would know what looks right and doesn't, and try to implement this in your work, but also staying true to what you like, and take it with a bit of grain of salt sometimes. Like, it's good to follow your gut, but also, yeah, taking on other people's point of views is good, because it's a different eye on what you've been working on. And usually when you work on something for a while, you tend to miss little details here and there that you might not think. Yeah, you just overlook some things sometimes. And yeah, it's quite good to just ask other people what they think, and just try to implement that as soon as they give you feedback, if they're willing to. Some people are a bit busy to always be giving feedback to you.
That's also very true. Guys, don't worry about waiting with questions. You can always throw them in, and we'll read them out if it's not been asked, or if it's different. Also, remember her ArtStation link should be on the description if anyone wants to look at it as well. So, Mara, do you want to look at your ArtStation a little bit? And
Yeah.
is there any pieces you specifically want to talk about?
Yeah, I would say an interesting one is probably the train scene that I've done, which I get very mixed feedback on this piece, which is why I think it's quite interesting.
All right, let me just have a look here, see if I can see if this works out of the box. Probably not. Okay, so I guess I can share my screen. Or do you want to share your screen so you can actually control the mouse and point as you want?
Yes, sure. So should I just go share screen? I'll go over here. Can you see this?
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. So this piece is quite interesting, because this is the first ever lighting study that I've done, which was about 2 years ago now. and it just looks all over the place. The lighting doesn't make sense. There's no real source of light for the pink. Where is this coming from? It's very, yeah, it's just a little bit all over the place. But what people keep telling me when I have my interviews, it's that it's just interesting to look at. It's just I had a lot of fun making this, and I think that's the main thing with lighting is that I just like to have fun and try things that are a bit out there, something that's not too realistic or something that's just what everyone does. So I wanted to just get like a very intense color palette and something a little bit different and just try to make it work. So that's what I did for this one, which, yeah, nothing makes sense, but it was still fun to do, and it's quite eye-catchy as well because this isn't like a usual train scene that you would see. So I think this was quite interesting that this is um, the project that got me hired. I'm pretty sure for like both my jobs because they both like had to talk about it for a while about how different it was. But you can still see that there's obviously problems. The shadows are very just not looking right, and there's a lot of things are wrong. But when you're doing a test, when you're doing lighting doodles, it's just nice to have some fun with it and just show what you can do in like a different um, set, I guess,
All right. So
if
did
that makes
you?
sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. So specifically did you do for this piece? What was your approach from start to the end? For example, references. Did you fix materials, or did you just do the lighting?
So I did look at some references from neo noir type of lighting and nighttime lighting of Tokyo and stuff like this, but I just wasn't very good at implementing my references into my work back then. So I just really just added heaps of point lights everywhere. I don't even think there's a skylight in there. Like it was just a little bit all over the place at that time. And I was just playing with the values and I was baking like all the time. Every time I was changing something, I was baking it to see how it would look. Um, and yes, it was just a whole lot of tweaking, just the spotlights, trying to get a feeling that I liked for it. Like the top lights, I really like the orange and how it's actually lighting the rooftop, but it doesn't make any sense. That's the one thing about this piece that I think is funny. Um, yeah, it's just not very. It's a bit, yeah, it's an old one, but it's good to have some fun with it and try different things that kind of takes you out of the lot of people that do a lot of the same similar things.
All right. Um, so, from what I understand, then is you believe this piece was one of the reasons, if not the reason, that you got hired. So, would you say then that it's a good idea to make pieces that is a bit different and stand out a little bit when you first do your lighting? Basically, is that what you're saying as well?
Yeah. Yeah, I really believe that that's a very good thing because the industry is getting so big now, and there's just so many people out there that are trying to get in, which is awesome that it's growing, but you want to stand out at some point. And I remember that a few of the pieces that I did back then, I didn't really think about if it was realistic, if it made sense, if this or this, or if the light was bouncing properly. I just wanted to have something that looked fun, and I just wanted to have fun with my lighting because this is what I really enjoyed doing. So I think it's probably a really good thing to try something different. Like there's a few scenes obviously with lighting that everyone has because it's on the marketplace. So it's if you're taking a scene that has been done 100 times, it's good to add your own personality and your own tweaks to it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so you've done a couple of other pieces, and sometimes you do a piece that might inspire other people to pick up the scene and do some lighting too. I remember seeing that you did the elephant piece as well recently, and a
Yeah,
couple
yeah.
of people started picking it up as well. Um, how does that feel when you're able to inspire other lighting artists to kind of push
Yeah,
themselves?
that was like I didn't expect it at all. It was really fun. I remember posting the scene because I actually saw it on the marketplace, and I was like, I don't think I've ever seen anyone do this scene before. It's such a beautiful scene, and like you can tell the artist put a lot of work into it. And I wanted to do something a little bit Tomb Raider style, Uncharted. So I worked on it for a couple of evenings, and when I posted it to ArtStation, it like straight away got I like very positive feedback. And a couple of days later, there was a few other people that posted their own version, and it was funny because I would see it and I was like, oh wow, I didn't think of doing it like this, or oh wow, this is such an interesting take. I would have never done this way. And so it's really good because everyone will have a different interpretation of the same thing. And I found that like really interesting, especially for lighting, because there's a million ways you can light a scene and it will give you a different mood, a different emotion when you look at it.
Yeah, that is definitely true. Which brings me to the next question, which we haven't gone too much into, is what is your current process when you approach lighting? Different people go, they pick the key light. Some people put in the skylight. There
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be a fixed way of doing something. But what is your way?
So I would usually start with like an idea of like, for example, the temple one that I've done. I would just start with an idea in my head and I would start gathering references that I think would look good as like a lighting scenario. And once I have enough references that I feel are good, I would just like go into the engine and put in just the skylight and try to tweak the skylight and just bake the skylight to see how it works on the environment. Once I have my skylight down, if it works for the scene, I try to bring in an HDRI, see how everything looks, maybe a sky dome. And once I have that set and that I feel like this is exactly going in the right direction, I bring in a directional light and I start tweaking to get interesting shadow work or get like something a little bit interesting in the background or just like really long shadows, something a bit dramatic. And I just tweak that for a little while. And once I have all of this looking great, then I add in some fill lights and spotlights here and there to bring certain spots in the environment that I feel are too dark. And after that, it's just, yeah, tweaking for a little while, usually a few days, and then some post-process and engine just to, yeah, get the midtones looking right and the contrast and stuff.
All right. Um, that's definitely a very useful approach to go. And if people have any questions, let me know. I see Vishesh is saying it's majestic. He's also watching our stream right now, so that's very nice.
Thank you.
Um, so there's one thing we skipped a little bit. So you mentioned a little bit your first job. You worked there for a year at A44, right?
Yes.
What game did you work on, and what specifically did you do?
I can't really say what I worked on yet. I'm under NDA, so
Oh, all
sorry
right.
about that.
Okay, cool.
But what I was doing is so mainly lighting for the worlds, and on top of that, because with lighting, it's a, I guess, complicated pipeline because you usually get in once the environments are finished or once everyone has an idea of what they want. So in the meantime, while I wasn't doing lighting, I was helping the level designer to just help set dress all everything just to make sure that they have an extra hand because it was a lot of work to do, which was really interesting because it helped me just develop a new skill that I didn't learn either at uni. And working with the senior designer was really fun. Just getting, yeah, a lot of knowledge on how to like play a path and combat systems and stuff like that was really fun. And it's always good to have different things up your sleeve, especially when you work in a smaller studio. You won't always do the same thing. You always have to help a little bit around and chip at different things to help the project. So that was like really good. And then when it got to the lighting, that was a lot of fun too. Everything was fully dynamic. So yeah, I was having a lot of fun with that.
That's good. So then you went to CGMA, and I believe you had a lighting course or something. Isn't that correct?
Yes, so it's the Art of Lighting for Games with Omar Gatica and yeah, from CGMA, and that was about I think 12 weeks.
How was that for you? Did you feel you picked up some new skills, or did you feel that it made you more comfortable after working a little bit with lighting at the studio? What happened with you?
Um, yeah, it was really good because you're working with a lot of other students. I think there was about 14 of us doing the course. And so every week you have a different scene that you have to light, and it's like a homework. And Omar will give you a list of things that you have to do for this week specifically. And on top of that, you also have a lecture that's usually about 2 hours long per week, and he's just showing you his process of how he's doing the lighting for that specific scene. And it was really good to see someone else's way of doing things. Like you were saying, everyone has a different way to work. And that really helped me put down how I work and try to grab some of the things that he does and try to implement it in my workflow and see if it fits with me and stuff like that. And then the whole feedback as well was amazing. It's very good to have feedback every week on what you're working on because it just helps you push it like further and further until it's like extremely polished. So it was a very, very good experience, and I really highly recommend doing this course if you're interested in lighting.
Cool. I already did the course, but can
Yeah.
also recommend other people to do it if they want to pick up some more skills. Um, so so you did the school, and then you worked at the studio, then you went to the CGMA, and then you got this current opportunity at Supermassive Games.
Yes.
What are you working on at Supermassive Games right now? Is that also under NDA?
Yes, I'm sorry. There's nothing juicy to share. I can't talk about anything.
So at the previous studio and Supermassive Game, are you using Unreal Engine or some in-house engine?
Yes, so for both of them, I've been using Unreal.
How do you feel about that? I would say that's an advantage when you're at the studio who happens to use a third-party technology that you can also
Yeah.
access at home. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's good because when I was learning lighting, the only engine that I was doing it in was Unreal, and I got really familiar with it. And then learning from the art of lighting as well, that helped a lot because Omar gives you a lot of like um, different, I guess, what's the word? Ways of using Unreal and how to make your lighting the best in Unreal, which was really fun to learn as well. And so now that I'm working, it's just I'm comfortable with the engine. I don't have to lose time learning an in-game engine or something else that I've never worked with before, and I don't know how the lighting will react in this specific engine.
That definitely makes sense. A note to you, Visesh. I figured out your self-marketing strategy. You leave comments on other people's art station and you wait for live stream to come. I see what you're doing. Yeah. So basically, so far for you, how do you feel about your journey? Is it been? Do you feel it's been like difficult for you? Has there been any challenges? Where are you right now?
I think it's always a little hard because there's always a point where you'll compare yourself to other people, other lighting artists, and it can get a bit difficult when you're trying to find a job. After the art of lighting and during, I wasn't working, so I was very stressed about finding a new job and if anyone would want me because I didn't have that much experience. But at the end of the day, if you just like put in the hours and put in the work to get better, you'll definitely find something that will suit you. Um, so yeah, it's just about not giving up and just trying like all the time to make something better and better every time you post your art.
So that brings us to did you ever clearly feel at any given moment that what you were doing was either insignificant or that this wasn't for you or you had any high insecurity or imposter syndrome at any given time?
Yeah, I think every artist has a little bit of imposter syndrome here and there. It definitely kicks in sometimes when you're having fun at work and you're just doing something that you really love, and then you're like, "Oh, I'm actually getting paid for this. Like, am I even good? Is this a good job? Are they happy with me? Am I doing something that's worth doing?" But yeah, it rides out, and once it does, and you actually play or just talk with your colleague about whatever you're making, you're making a difference. And the gaming industry is so big, and whatever game you're going to put out there, there will be people playing it and loving the environments and complementing it and complementing the lighting. And it just, I think, is worth it, and it will feel really good once you have a project that's out and people can actually see all the hours that you've put in.
That's also a good point to bring out. So I was gonna wait about 5 minutes, but I think it's a good opportunity to continue the next topic, which is women in games. I mean, you are a woman, are you not? So,
Yes.
so how has it been? Because we have a lot of topics about, different topics about women in games. Like my experience is normally positive with women, and so I don't necessarily have any experience even myself with women who have negative experience, but it might also be
Yeah.
because I'm in Europe, probably helps a little bit, I think. Uh, so let's talk a little bit. Let's investigate that. Let's start with
Yeah.
if you felt anything during your university years, like how many guys were in your class, and did
Oh man.
treatment, so on and so forth.
It's definitely a very male dominant industry. When I was at uni at the first year, there was probably 60 students, and there was probably 10 females, so very little. And yeah, and as the years went, people left or dropped out, and I'm pretty sure the last year of uni, there was probably like 7 or 8 of us ladies, so there wasn't a lot. But except that it was fine, like everyone was extremely lovely, but I did feel like once you get in industry, I was a little overwhelmed, and I feel like I had this feeling of proving myself that I was just as worth being here as all the males in the industry, which I think is just how women tend to think. Like we want to make sure people know that we're worth it and that we deserve to be here as much as anyone else. But I've never had any bad experience with male in the industry. I think everyone has been very welcoming. And I also thank the years. I feel like 2020 and 2021, people are more aware of things that are happening with women in the industry, and people are more respectful now, and we just have a bit more opportunity, and we're just being seen a lot more, which I think is really good.
So here comes the two-sided question: do you feel you have a slight advantage now because you're a woman?
I probably, maybe. I feel like the advantage would probably, when people are hiring, they would probably want a bit of diversity in the people they hire, and I think it's great that now I guess people tend to think that, oh, this woman is just as much as this man that are applying for this job, and we both have the same I guess value, and we both, I guess, given a equal chance for the job, which I think is very good because yeah, I obviously years ago they would probably tend to go for a male applicants, but now, yeah, and there's a lot of female influencers now out there that just show that we're just as good, and so we deserve a fair chance.
So what you're saying is that at least you have had the tendency of feeling that you needed to prove yourself, and to kind of prove that you guys can do the same type of work at the same quality. Um, I can only speak for myself that I never think like that, so I don't think you should worry about
Yeah.
that at all. I think it's
Oh, that's
just,
good.
I think it's just something. Maybe I think it's something girls pick up at an early age that they need to do that. Maybe from parents or marketing society. But most people I talk to, but I'm waiting for someone to say the opposite. But it's definitely interesting to listen to this to understand the psychology behind
Yeah.
you and other women that you get to feel like this, because it's interesting, but it's also a bit, should I say, a bit sad that you kind of feel that you need to prove yourself, or do more when you could do
Yeah.
probably less and do equally well, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's all changing now, so hopefully in the future everyone will have a good chance. But at least it's, coming out more and more on social medias about the right conducts to have towards a certain group of people, and yeah, and women as well. Like I think we have a bigger voice now, and we can actually do more change now that we're more involved.
So when I was at the uni, finishing uni, which I think was around 2007, I think I finished. So this is a few years back. We had one girl in our class.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's more people now, as you say, it's 10 now. So it sounds a bit correct, like one more girl every year in the class, basically.
Yeah, that's that's it. Yeah, just a girl every year.
So do you think, because I'm pretty fascinated with this topic because I read a lot about research about female psychology and just female and men in general and gender roles. What I think I want to ask as well is, do you think the amount of women increasing in games is related to if they actually want to go in games, or if they are being encouraged just to fill a quota or to fill a statistic? Because I used to teach in university, and a lot of times behind the scenes we are talking about encouraging people to come in so we get more money, or we can get
Mm.
fill a quota, not necessarily because the person is interested in that. Do you have any thought at all?
Um, I feel like females are just feeling more comfortable now that they can have a career that they've wanted to do, and it's just more open to them now. Like for myself, every time I tell someone that I'm working in games, it's always, oh my God, like that's so interesting. As a female, I thought you were doing like, like something entirely different than games. Like it's such a men thing to do, but it's really not. Like there's so many girls that play games, so why not just as many game dev? There are girls as well. And I think it's just good because more female are actually following what they want to do and not just not doing it because they're worried that they won't have a voice in this particular field. Um, so yeah, but then again, I'm not like an expert. I'm sure there's a lot of other reasons that ladies join the industry, or not. I'm not sure. But for me, it was mostly because I wanted to do games and I wanted to be a part of something big that was making a video games is such an interesting thing. And I never thought, I don't know if I can do it because it's such a male industry. I was just like, yeah, I don't mind. I'll just do my thing. It's just as good, and I don't care what anyone will say. And hopefully, more girls are like this now, and we can have a lot of game devs that are just here because they want to, and not just to feel a status quo.
Exactly. I'm sure male nurses also feel the same way, where they have a tendency to get stigmatized because they are male and they want to work in a, I quote with my hands, what's this called? Feminine industry.
Mm,
So I definitely think it's a good thing that we are open about it. I do think it's sad if women continue to feel this way. Still have a hard time understanding men who view people in general like this. I'm a man of color, so obviously I wouldn't want to be hired because of a quota. Generally,
yeah,
I would want to be hired because I am. I know I have been hired once because
because
of
you're
the
good at what
quota.
you do and
Yeah,
not because of something else. Yeah, exactly. I do feel like this as well sometimes. Like you're saying, just, oh, I hope I wasn't hired for this because they needed a female in the team, but more so like, oh, I hope I got hired because I'm like good at what I do, and it's also great that I'm a female because there's going to be more of us in the industry. um, yeah, it's definitely a topic that's very interesting because everyone will have a different view on it and a different experience. So yeah, um, pretty sure they're independent. If anyone is listening, sorry guys, I've only been here for a month. I don't know. I'm pretty sure they're independent. I don't think so. I do a little bit, but there was a time where a lot of bad stuff was coming out about women in games and how they were treated, and it was just so depressing to read, and it was just so like it felt really personal, and I just like kind of stopped reading about it for a while because it just really sucks to see that other females in the industry suffer from abuse and a lot of different things like this, emotional or others, obviously. So I tend to just kind of stay away from it, which is probably a bad thing on my part because I miss on a lot of subjects. But yeah.
self. Sorry, apparently I managed to mute myself because I'm so awesome at this.
Oh,
Hopefully I wasn't muted too long. Um, Well, at least you want to hear me. That's good to know. So I was just asking generally about whatever she was just answering. Is it was my question basically. Um, so we're just driving more into the topic of women in games because I think it's important to highlight it. But I also, because I want to understand it more, as I told Mara in private, it's just I'm surrounded by normally strong, feminine, and powerful women. I am normally have bosses who are women where I'm right now. Most of the CEO is a woman. The second person in charge is a producer. She is a woman. I had female bosses at university, including as well. So for me, it's very interesting to hear people having difficult times and understanding which part of the world having this issue. So assuming you have had or had not had any challenges as a woman in games, do you have any tips to the men out there in terms of approaching and dealing with women in games?
I think it's all about just having as much respect for us as you would for your male peers. Like, don't go around, just talking to us differently or mansplaining things to us. We were having the same job. We obviously understand what's going on, and I feel like sometimes they kind of talk us down. I've kind of noticed with some people. Obviously, it depends, right? Yeah, I feel like it's just about like respect and like we're the same. We all have the same goal is like getting this game out or working on this, and it should just be about like just working together in harmony. Like, don't go around messaging us asking if we want to have a drink. Like, we're colleagues. Like, it should just stay professional and it should just stay, yeah, just respectful, I think is the main thing. And if we're saying something that we feel uncomfortable with, then I guess just like, I don't know how to say it without being rude, but just take it and understand that this is how we're feeling and don't go around making us feel more uncomfortable about whatever it is that we're trying to stay away from. I've noticed that some people can get a little touchy when you're telling them, oh, I actually feel uncomfortable with this. And then they'll be like, oh, but it wasn't in that way. It doesn't matter that it wasn't in that way. It wasn't comfortable for me. And so you just shouldn't do it. So yeah, just respect, I would say, is like the main thing that everyone wants, right?
Yeah, but do you feel do you feel when you feel these things, it's related because you are viewing it from the point of a woman, or do you actually believe that as the people that you are referring to approach you in this way because you're a woman, or not just because that's personality
Yeah,
based?
I think it's different the second one. Some people will approach you in a certain way because you're a woman and they will do things because you're a woman, and I think that's just not right. They should just stay professional and do things because you're a colleague and just be a normal person around us. Like, be nice. Don't go around being creepy. And yeah, I think a lot of people just don't know how to act sometimes, and it's funny, right? Like, everyone has different social skills, but yeah, it can make us uncomfortable, and it's just not why we're here for. And then it makes us feel uncomfortable going into work, and then we don't want to say anything because then it'll be like, oh, like just making trouble, or just like, girls just, it's not all about you or stuff like this, which I think is just repulsive. Like, this is why sometimes we just wouldn't talk about something, because we know you'll go to the CEO and he's a male, so he will see it from his point of view, and you will feel like you're not being heard about whatever the issue is, and then the male will get away with it. And yeah, if everyone was just being respectful to each other, understand that, yeah, just we're colleagues and you don't take your personal life into it, and that's about it, then I'm sure everyone will have a way better time making games.
So you did give an example of being messaged for drinks. Is this the case with you, or is it just an example?
It's not me personally, but I know people where who it happened to, or I have people on Outstation messaging me, "Hey, what's your private Instagram?" And it you don't need to know it. You're here for my work, right? Like, I don't want you to see my personal life, and I feel like it's just sometimes it can be seen as objects or something when you're posting about your work, and then they will just message you about something entirely different, or just ask you like creepy stuff, and it's just not right. I think it's just or maybe they do it just to spark a fire, right? But it's just not okay. Like we
So,
wouldn't be doing this, so don't do it to us.
so what are we defining as creepy stuff?
Oh, just like just weird messages that you just wouldn't send a colleague, or a professional relationship should stay professional, and that's that.
So there was an example on LinkedIn, I think last year or 2 years ago. I remember this. There was a woman. She had a beautiful profile picture, and she was commented. Uh, People were commenting on LinkedIn because she was pretty, basically, and
Mm.
she didn't like it because it's a professional platform. So that's not really the place to
Yeah.
throw compliments. So that's kind of the type you mean, that if it's a professional content,
Yeah,
you're not in the mode.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, they actually reminded me of like that just gave me like a trigger from a few years ago. There's this person on Outstation that messaged me saying, "Oh my God, like you're so beautiful," and I was like, "Oh, thanks, but this is my art, so I hope that my art is probably better than what it looked like." And he just replied, "Oh, I don't think so. There's definitely people more talented, but maybe not as pretty." And I'm like, "Well, I really don't see this as a compliment. Like you're like criticizing my work in a way that is not how I would like it, right? Like I don't mind constructive criticism, but saying just message me saying you're so not talented but you're pretty is kind of like not what I want from someone messaging me on Outstation.
I think that's where us men probably have a harder time, because we can't attract people to our profile based on how we look generally, so I
Mm,
think that's the difference, that the women might get unintended attention because they have a nice profile picture, so they're actually not getting attention because they are talented. They're getting attention because they look pretty, and that's kind of the case here. Is if you go into someone's at least our station LinkedIn profile, what we're saying here is, go into it because you appreciate the person's skills and talent, not because
yeah, exactly.
they're well presented. Luckily, men don't probably have that problem. Not last I checked, I don't get messages saying, "Hey, you look great today."
But your skills are not that good, man. Yeah.
uh, it's a different topic if I would appreciate it or not as a man, but because it doesn't happen to us, I probably wouldn't mind. But because it happens so much to women, I think it's a different mentality, because
Mm.
it happens so much. And I'm sure Instagram is filled with people trying to pick you up. I'm sure Facebook is. I mean, I talk a lot about this to girls outside of my streams as well, and it is. I've seen people show me the LinkedIn chat. I've seen people show me the Osses, and like, as women, I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, what's wrong with man? You're putting me in a bad spot and
Mm.
representing people who are good men being represented poorly because they are. I don't even know what they're doing on our station. Like, why are they doing it on our station to begin with?
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
so that's definitely interesting. Again, people, you have some time to give some questions. If you have some questions, we're definitely balancing this interview, like about games, about women in games, because it is, as I said, it is very important that we get the basic understanding. At least I don't think we get the super good understanding, but a good basic understanding, I think, is definitely good for all of us.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel that you do have an advantage because people do approach you because you have a good first impression?
Probably. I feel like a good first impression is always nice. Like it's always a better way to start a conversation. If you're friendly, you'll have an easier time chatting, at events and stuff like this, which is like really good. But I don't think I really have a big advantage. I feel like I personally don't think I've experienced anything that made me, top of the list or bottom of the list because of it.
Yep. Um, and in case, Mara, if I ever talk down to you, it's not because you're a woman. It's probably because I'm just doing it for whatever reason. Maybe my social skill glass is empty for the day, or maybe I'm just tired. Who knows? So
Yeah, no problem.
don't worry about that. Let's see here. I think we managed to cover the most things. So, Mara, is there anything else you would like to add that we might have missed, so that you just have an opportunity to speak something, anything? Is there anything you want to add?
Um, I'm not too sure. If anyone has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer what I can. Um, Nothing about work, please. NDAs are very specific. Um, But yeah, I think it's just really good that you're doing so many interviews with lighting artists because it's still a skill and a profession that's quite new, I would say, that's just growing and that's often very overlooked. So yeah, thank you for that.
I think it's growing a lot though. Like I see a lot of people transitioning over to
Yeah.
lighting and doing like a lot of stuff is going on. Some of the interviews we have are actually people, including this year, yeah, have transitioned from like 2D and stuff and
Yeah.
other kind of craft. It's definitely interesting. Some people think it's easier. Like before they start the journey, they think that lighting is very easy, and then they get into it and they understand. Wait, you have to understand color theory, you have to understand composition, storytelling, mood. I mean, it does get complicated. The more you get into it, the higher level you get into it, it's definitely get
Mm.
more complicated. So, please, questions, Mr. Pokolot, Benjamin, Visesh, don't be shy, just ask a question. So, we have a question from Lars. Do you make sketches first? So,
Mm.
that could be like a
Jammy
hand.
sketches. I make blockouts in Unreal, so if I have an idea of something I want to do, you can always use, the free packs from Unreal and the cubes and everything, and I maybe try to get the basic shapes of the composition that I want to have for my scene. And then I implement a bit of just a directional light to see how the feel is, and I tweak a bit of the composition around and stuff. But I don't do any Photoshop sketches or anything like that, no.
Can you share? This is from Visesh. Can you share some thoughts on your approach on lighting when compared to working on a professional and personal project? So, if you do have a different approach to these things.
Yeah, I'd say my approach is quite different. When I'm doing a professional work scene, I usually don't work on it by myself. I have my lead or I have my colleague lighting artist that work on it with me a little bit. So we have a lot of concepts that helps us like kind of get the mood for what we have to do for lighting. We have to get everything approved. We have to have feedback sessions to make sure that everything is um, the way they want it, the way the game is supposed to go. And also, it's quite time restricted. You can't spend, 3 months on one scene when you're working on a professional project. So it's a little bit faster. Like the pace is just way faster when you have to do work like that. But for my personal project, I just take as much time as I want. If I feel like I'm a little bit burn out from the scene, I just close it down, don't look at it for a few days, and then open it back up, and I can just have fun with it. I can try different color palettes, I can try different gradients, I can try a lot of different things that gives me just more liberty to make the scene my own. Whereas for work, I just can't do any of that because we have set color palettes, we have a set idea of how this specific scene should look, and you can't you have a little bit of an artistic input, but at the end of the day, you have to follow what the concepts were and what the I guess the boss wants, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I mean, I totally agree that I remember a couple of other interviews, people talking about that one of the reasons they do personal lighting is because it's their ability or the opportunity to do some creative lighting that suits their style, their taste, and their approach, but also to keep in touch with keeping themselves updated. And so I will follow up with another question in this regard. Do you do a lot of work to keep up to date technology wise, or do you feel it's a bit daunting? I am reaching a certain age where I'm getting exhausted and trying to keep up with the tech. But where are you? Where are you
Yeah.
in that stance?
Um, I think so far it's been fine. Is like for example, I would very much like to try ray tracing, but I just don't have the money for a card, and it's just not going to happen anytime soon. So I watched a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of articles about people that manage to use this stack, and I just try to take notes and be like, oh, the day I can use it, I will have all this knowledge on paper that I can try to implement. But except that if I try to keep up to date, it's mostly with articles. ArtStation has such a great learning thing, the marketplace and the blogs and everything, and YouTube as well has some amazing game dev that just posts like so much knowledge that they've acquired throughout the years. So yeah, it's always quite easy to follow, but not as easy to just like do it yourself sometimes.
So, Lars Stenhoff, you sound Scandinavian, but I might be wrong, um, is asking, do you light with post-processing on or before the post effects?
So I don't like with the post processing on because it alters the lighting quite a lot. So what I would do is put the post process on, just drag it into Unreal, and I just tweak the exposure settings to help me get a feel of the scene and a feel of like the amount of light that I want. And once I'm really happy with my lighting, once I've had feedback on it, once I'm sure this is what I want, then I can start implementing a bit more color grading. Just because if you have it too early and you try to bake your lighting or just tweak it a little bit, you won't have accurate results. So it's just going to be completely altered by the processing that you've been putting in. So I find it personally that it's always better to put it afterwards to, push the scene a little bit further, but not lighting with it entirely, if that makes sense.
Cool. Well, he can always ask a follow-up question if he didn't.
Yes.
I noticed you were the word when you feel it's right. Does that mean you're not trying to go for like physically correct? You're trying to use your artistic eye to kind of judge what you're looking for?
Yes, so for my personal projects, I quite rarely make something that's physically accurate, or I try obviously to implement it, but at the end of the day, it's just about my gut feelings. If I feel like the scene needs a little bit more, or if I'm stuck, I will ask for feedback, or I will just leave it for a little bit and then go back to it until I feel like it's right.
All right.
Yeah, but it obviously depends. Like sometimes I'll just be stuck on it for a while and nothing feels right, so I'll start all over again. And then, yeah, and then I'll just try a different temperature, I'll try something different, and then I'll be like, maybe I should try this color grading with it and implement it as I go. But yeah, I usually keep it for last once I'm like kind of happy with my scene. But you're never fully happy with your work, it can always be improved.
That's true. And how are you on that regard? Since you pointed it out anyway. So when you are doing a
Um,
piece, when do you stop? Like when do you know? Is it amount of feedback that's positive, or what's the stop
yeah, I
sign?
think it's at the time where I have about 15 screenshots that look just the same after tweaking it for 3 hours. I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here anymore, or I feel like this is right. Let me ask for maybe some feedback. Someone will probably, notice, oh, at the back, your shadows are a bit off, or, your light isn't really baked properly. And then, oh, I didn't notice that there was something. So then it just gives me a little extra to work on. But once usually I just feel it. I'm just like, okay, I think this is it. This is what I want to convey. This is where I think it ends, and then I'll just post this. But then I will look back at the scene a couple of weeks back or a couple of months back, and I'm like, oh wow, there's so much more I could have done. Like this is just so wrong. But it's because you're always improving and you always have a new eye on your own work. Um, so yeah, there's always just so much you can do with your scenes.
That's interesting. Is there any pieces in your station, if you were to look at it right now, that you would go, I would do this differently or this differently?
Um, yeah, I think there's a lot of things that I would do differently for a lot of like all of them really, because I've kind of changed a little bit my perspective on them and stuff. Um, but I think that's a good thing because it means that you're improving and you can see your mistakes that you've done and you can the next project that you'll be working on, you can just try and not avoid these mistakes, or you can just like you can always just go back and tweak it again. Like I know the person Nicholas Mendoza, the guy that made the elephant temple scene, after we all did the relights of it, he decided to go back and do it again as well for his own personal project, which I think is awesome because the project was a few years old, but he brought it back to life with a new and different lighting. And that was like really fun to see as well because, sometimes we'll go back to a scene years later and feel like it's just not right anymore, and you can just always tweak it.
That's great. So you're saying we can expect some more wonderful lighting pieces in your portfolio soon?
Yeah, I have a few work in progress at the moment, but it's just never ending. I have too many that I'm working on.
So how does that work for you when you have too many? Is it because you're like inspired and you're doing like multiple projects and then you cancel one, or what happens?
Oh, it's usually I'll be just like laying on the couch watching TV and I'm like, oh, I have this idea. And then I just run upstairs and do a little block out of like just to get it out of my head into paper, as we can say, and just so I can just try it out and see where this could go. And then sometimes I have half finished work in progress, so I have fully finished one that I'm just leaving there in case I feel like I want to change them later. It's just, yeah, getting the ideas out of my head.
Definitely. So I guess we'll take the last question because I think we've made up for our lost time in the beginning. Um, so Visesh has a silly off-topic question. It's not really silly. I think it's still interesting. What would be your profession if you were not a lighting artist?
Oh, that's pretty interesting. So before I moved to New Zealand to do my studies for game art, I was doing a tattoo apprenticeship in New Caledonia. So I would probably be doing that.
Nice tattoo. Let's see. We can do one more question since people are starting to get active with the questions. Do you light each scene? This is from Lars. Do you light each scene for the day and night, or only for what the scene needs in the game?
Yes, so I would only light it for what I've been asked to do. It depends on the project, but they won't always be a day and night cycle. Sometimes you will just make a game that needs daylight scenes, or sometimes you'll just make a scene that needs a nighttime moonlight lighting. So I usually just do what they're asking me. I will never just do two different things that haven't been approved beforehand because it'll be a waste of time for me to do it without approval. And it's also, if it's not the direction of the game, then it wouldn't make sense to do it.
Cool. So, Mara, how do I pronounce your last name?
Oh, Cerreti.
Cerreti. So this is Mara Cerreti. So any more questions? You have her LinkedIn and art sessions, so I'm sure she would appreciate professional uh, uh, networking. I think we've gotten
Yes.
an insight on how you should approach people in general. It should be common sense, really. It doesn't really matter what gender they are.
Yeah,
Just don't be an ass, basically. Yes.
exactly.
So thank you, Mara, for being part of the interview. I will close the stream and I'll talk a little bit with Mara to get some feedback of the session. But the rest of you guys,
Yeah, of course.
have a nice day. Share the video for others to watch if they didn't get the chance to join this early or this late. Depends your time zone. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
most people in the Europe is probably still sleeping because it's the weekend. So
Yeah.
all right. So bye to everyone else. As to talk to you
Yeah.
guys.
See you.